After nearly 2 years, over 100 episodes, and countless hours of trying to record introductions, today is Pieter Bos's final day on the Pro-Life Guys podcast. Stay tuned and hear a little bit more from the man, the myth, the legend himself about this journey and where we're going from here. Hi folks, my name is Cam Cote. I have been the co-host of the Pro-Life Guys podcast for the last 2 years with my great and noble friend, Pieter Bos. Pieter Bos, how you doing, buddy? I'm not going to give you a chance to say very much at all, especially not in the intro, because today is a bit of a sad episode, and I want to make sure that I'm not going to be tearing up or anything, and so I'm going to throw it over to you in just a moment. For those of you who are new, we are two guys who are passionate about protecting preborn babies. We're passionate about equipping you with the tools that you need to have compelling and compassionate conversations about abortion. For the last 2 years, we've been pumping out episodes on this, our flagship. We've got a bunch of episodes called Humans of the Pro-Life Movement, a handful of episodes called The Pulse. And Pieter, after such an incredible run, today is your final episode. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling sad. I do want to correct you, though. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. You said after nearly 100 episodes, the podcast has had about 151.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, right off the top, I know behind the scenes, you laughed at me for all the times that I tried to record those introductions and completely failed. So on the air, my final time, sir. Now, I wasn't on all of those 151s because some of those were Humans of the Pro-Life Movement, which we did individually. But 151, man, in what is it, year and a half, year and three quarters?
Yeah. We launched for those of you who want to go for a stroll down memory lane, we launched in the summer of 2020, shortly after the world went crazy with COVID-19, and a ton of our projects got shut down. I still remember my first call to Jonathan Van Maren, our colleague and friend, who we talked about an awful lot, I know. And he and I were talking a little bit about what are we going to do? What are we going to do for this summer? What are we going to do particularly for a guy like Pieter, who was geared up to lead a national cross-country tour? What are we going to do to keep him busy? We need to keep him in the fold. We got to figure out something meaningful and enjoyable for him to do. And it was at that moment that I pitched to Jonathan to do a podcast. And initially the idea that I broached with you, and I want to get your take on how this unfolded in your eyes, but to pitch to you and actually Vanessa Otten, who is one of our colleagues as well, the idea of hosting a podcast. And one thing led to another, and we kicked off the Pro-Life Guys podcast. And I'm curious, Pieter, so 2 years ago, over 2 years ago, we get hit by COVID. You are scheduled to lead this cross-country Faces of Abortion Victims tour. What was going through your mind at that point when you were the special projects director and had your special project kind of pulled down from underneath you, and then this idea of a podcast came up? Was it something that you were keen about initially, or is it something that you were pretty hesitant on initially?
Well, in terms of the speaking tour, that was a huge bummer because we had planned to go from coast to coast here in Canada, travel across the country. I had some talks scheduled in Berlin, Germany as well, with our good friends at Pro-Life Europe. And all of that CCBR staff were meeting like every 5 minutes as new COVID updates came to us and new things unfolded. And we're just trying to navigate, what to cancel, what to keep going. And my project got canceled first. I mean, the internships, they hung on like just barely for a lot longer, and some of the other projects as well. But mine went first. So I was thinking the same thing, like, all right, so I've put so much energy in the last few months planning this, organizing this, thinking about it. I mean, you and I had collaborated quite a bit with Rachel. I think, was Rachel still here? Certainly maybe Quiana. Anyway, one of them. Doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Brittany, I know Carolyn was gearing up for it, and then a few others. Our good friends Samuel Say and Vanessa Otten, we were kind of working towards the summer, which was when we were going to go coast to coast, do outreach in every major city that we chose, and then have speaking engagements as well. Anyway, so yeah, that was a bummer, but I was pretty excited about the concept and the idea of a podcast, and I thought I would be far better at it first than I actually initially was. And I know you remember this with fond memories as well, that we recorded episode 1 and then trashed it and then re-recorded episode 1 and then listened to it and then trashed it and then re-recorded episode 1. And that was the one that finally made it. And then, I don't know, like half a year later, I didn't dare listen to it again, just for fear of how bad it actually sounded. That was one of the most popular episodes, because I think most people just dove down to the very first episode to see what we were all about. But I was pretty excited about it, man. The idea of a podcast, I think I had thought about it a little bit, but not seriously. Well, what was the stereotype? I mean, you made a joke about it on episode 1. Like, look, Mom, I finally made it. Here we are. I have a podcast in my 20s. I don't know if you were in your 20s then, but hey. So it was like, I mean, I listen to podcasts all the time, and to start our own and to do it not just on like a random topic where we just, shoot the as the saying goes, shoot the breeze. There you go.
Shoot the breeze, right? That's the saying. Yeah,
that's the one. That's the word I didn't think of. Yeah. But to actually take some of the things that we've learned on the streets, Cam, I know I failed a lot on the streets in conversations, and I had a lot of conversations where you just scratch your head thinking like, they're probably worse off in terms of their worldview than after the conversation when I started, because of how miserably I failed that. But able to take some of the things that we learned on the streets, some of the strategies, some of the friends that we've met in the movement, and take that all to the podcast so that others could learn some of the things that we have as well, and others could be equipped for on the street activism, for face-to-face conversations with family, friends, and others. So initial thoughts. I mean, I was pretty excited. That's a lot. I feel like we've switched this, Cam, for our listeners who've been with us for a while. I'm usually the one who like keeps things on track, and you're the one who constantly says, "Oh, I'm sorry about rambling. Like, I'm sorry, that was pretty longer than I should have gone." But now that you've taken me down memory lane, the listeners are like, "Wow, Pieter can talk too a little bit." So,
Pieter.
All that to say, I was pretty excited to answer your question. I was pretty excited initially when we were discussing the podcast.
Gotcha. I love it. And let's keep the memory lane rolling, because I want to know. So I have a few of my personal favorites in episodes that we've recorded, some that I really didn't think were going to stand out. And this is no slight towards the guest or the topic that we were covering. It was just a matter of, I think people might be interested in this. I think often of Mark Crutcher, and how I knew so little about Mark Crutcher before he came on the show, and then it absolutely blew my mind. And I've gone back and forth with Mark a number of times since the episode. But I'm curious, in the last 2 years, we've talked to many of the leaders in not only Canada's pro-life movement, but the global pro-life movement, both on again, this, our flagship kind of program, and also Humans of the Pro-Life Movement. You had the opportunity to interview a whole bunch of the high and kind of lower profile members of the global pro-life movement. I'm curious, what episodes, what interviews, what interactions stand out to you? What comes down as you look back on your time with the program as really memorable people that you've had to gotten the opportunity to work with? Who stands out to you?
I think, the point you make about Mark Crutcher, we knew so little about him. We had him on the podcast by recommendation, and then learned so much about him, talked with him afterwards, got some books from him, and marked them up as we read them. And that was pretty exciting. I think that's got to be one of the top things for me, is meeting the heroes of the movement that I didn't know existed. I mean, we had great friends of ours on who we've met before, who we've interacted before, like Alyssa Globe, for example, or Scott Hayward, or Jonathan Van Maren, Scott Klusendorf, who you had met before. I had never met him before. And folks like that, folks we're good friends with, who we know are heroes in the movement, leaders in the movement, doing great things. But then also the folks that we were connected with, sometimes it was by recommendation from our listeners, sometimes by some of our colleagues. And a few times we had people reach out to us and say, we listened to part of your podcast. We think we'd be, this message would be a great fit. And they were in fact correct about that. So I think about Dr. Matthew Harrison, who knew about the abortion reversal procedure? Because we all know about the abortion pill and the effects that has. I think about Alison Santafonte, great conversation. Scott Klusendorf, we had a great conversation. One of the ones that was really interesting that I found was so cool was Mary Helen Mose, who runs the Crisis Pregnancy Center in Toronto, Aid to Women, episode 57, Saving Babies from the Abortionist Next Door. And man, like just so many insights that we learned from a conversation like that. Lila Rose, I mean, was that her biggest name? And we had a few big names, but that was pretty cool. Learning about some of the undercover investigations that she did in episode 36. There was Josh Kappas, who I thought was great, who's with Love Life America, seeking to equip churches across the United States to stand out and witness in front of their local abortion clinics and be the church essentially to mothers and fathers who are in great need and as well as their children. And that was episode 40. So I think like the biggest highlight in that sense would be meeting some of these people virtually, I guess. I mean, and some of it, we met virtually, and then I was able to meet them later on as well. I think of MP Kathy Wagenthal. We had a great conversation with her, and then she was at the March for Life in Toronto just a few weeks ago from time of recording. And we connected there and had a brief chat before I had to jump back on stage and do some of the emceeing. So things like that. I think about Arnold Viersen. We had a great conversation with Arnold Viersen, and I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I'll mention a little bit of what happened. So we had a conversation with Arnold Viersen. We're just talking about some things in the pro-life movement. He's just spitballing some ideas of things the movement could do. One of them was baby boxes at fire halls and hospitals and various places where, for at-risk women who are in very challenging situations who can't keep their child can bring their child to the fire hall, and they can know with 100% certainty that their child will be cared for properly from there on out. And someone was listening to the podcast, a good friend of ours, Daniel Gilman, who was also a guest, and we had a great Christmas reflection from him. And he was listening, and he said, "Oh man, like that's a great idea." So he was working for Arnold, and then he and Arnold actually spearheaded that. And now there are these baby boxes. I know there's one in Calgary. I know there are a few other mayors who are considering it across Canada as well. And so, I mean, that's kind of cool from the podcast. He's spitballing ideas, someone else hears it, and it takes off. And yeah, I mean, that was pretty cool. Anyway, the second big thing, Cam, and you'll understand this completely, and you'll totally agree and know exactly why I think this was one of my highlights. It was to spend, I mean, we spent, you and I, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week together virtually. We chatted on the podcast, but we would often, I mean, before recording or after recording, just chat about a number of things as well. Both, work things like what we're doing in our respective offices, but also, baseball stats and, other sporting things, because you lack a good friend in the Calgary office who knows, how to sport and what, what sports is. So, what sports are. Anyway, so those are a few things. But yeah, that was a highlight. I mean, spending time with you was most of the time recording, I'm looking at my camera, not looking at you. You're in the sort of peripheral vision, but having our conversations and, many good times, many laughs, and it was fantastic.
Gotcha. Absolutely. And one thing that listeners have not, and you guys can hope that this might make it to the light of day at some point. One of my favorite memories, Peter, was when you came out to the Calgary Crash Course here last summer, the summer of 2021, and you and I recorded a whole bunch of short videos called Pieter versus Cam. We haven't published any of them. I don't know what we're going to do with them. I do really hope that we can do up like some kind of montage or something. We're going to talk to our producer, Maddie Halleck, to see if he can make something happen. But we just thought that it'd be a ton of fun to just do a whole bunch of random. We played a couple games of chess. We played a couple games of cribbage. We did a free throw contest. We did a 3-point contest. We did a crossbar challenge, kicking soccer balls. Like, we just spent the day, and we just told everyone else in the office, like, hey, we're taking a one-day break from activism and from paperwork, and Peter and I are doing really important stuff for the podcast. And then we just went out, like, threw footballs around and kicked soccer balls, and it was a much-needed break. And so that's one of my favorite memories that hasn't made it on the air yet. But like I said, we might get some clips of that. If you want to see some clips of that, hit us up on social media. Let us know what you're interested in, and some of those might squeak out on social media in the next little bit here.
Yeah, that was fun. I think that was like what do you call it when you have like office staff and you go to an escape room and you have an exercise and it's like a bonding, what do you call that? Like a team building experience. There you go.
Team building, team synergy.
I feel it's like a podcast host building experience. I mean, the fun of it was not that we were going to post it. The fun of it was that I was going to beat you in all the activities that we did. um, which I didn't. I mean, I feel like we were
We were
tied until
pretty
the last
close. We
one,
were pretty
and then
close.
you got the crossbar challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as well. We signed up for Twitch. We got a Twitch account, and we're like every Friday afternoon we're gonna play chess or cribbage or some other online game on Twitch, and have conversations. Now the one time we did, I mean, there was one time we were on, and it was the only time we were on, but there was a guy who discovered us somehow. I mean, there's like thousands of Twitch streams happening at the same time. He found us somehow, decided to stay on, and was actually asking us questions. So I mean, that was a cool opportunity that we,
cool.
we thought about for a few minutes. I went on a few weeks later, Cam, and I know I told you this story, and we use this program, and I wanted to see if it worked. So I went on Twitch and I opened it up, and I was like, okay, this is working. So I just muted myself over here as I recorded. And then I noticed that there was one viewer. So I'm just talking about abortion with this one viewer. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep playing chess, and I'm just going to keep talking until he goes away. And I discovered later, like half an hour in, that one viewer was myself on the other screen, making sure that it was working. So I had this like phenomenal, pro-life apologetics and everything else, and just really encouraging him to ask questions and to get on the stream and like be active. And there was no one there. It was a good exercise for myself, but it was pretty funny. We did a few things like that. I think we had like some grand ideas of the various projects that we were going to do. I know one of them. I don't know what you thought of this, but I thought it was pretty funny. Was having a game show where we had leaders in Canada's pro-life movement who would get together. We'd have some folks from Right Now and some folks from ARPA or We Need a Law and some folks from CCBR, and do like trivia games and like all these game shows. And that would have been fun. I think it would have been more fun like as an internal exercise than it would be for the viewer. But maybe the viewer would like it. But lots of memories, man. Lots of memories.
Lots of memories, and I think it speaks volumes to the community that we're a part of and the people that we get to know. And like you mentioned, so many of the incredible people that we've had on the show in various capacities and whatnot that have helped make the show happen. And that's the next thing I want to pick your brain on of like, when we got into this, Jonathan basically gave me you know what, if you guys just record into the microphone and nobody listens to it, at least we can use them as like intern training content, that it doesn't matter. The value of the show is not dictated by the audience, not dictated by the quote unquote traditional success of the show. And that was certainly freeing for the two of us, especially when we were starting out. We realized just how hard podcasting actually is, that you actually have to do an awful lot of prep to be able to make this happen. This isn't to pump our own tires, but it was comforting to know that, you know what, the expectations were set really low from our communications director. And yet it has been so cool to see how well this show has taken off. And I don't know if you have any of the numbers in front of you, but are there any numbers that you think are worth it, that stand out in your mind, that have been impressive? Did you think that the show was going to take off as it did right from the get-go? What do you think about the magnitude of impact that this show has been able to achieve, thanks entirely to you, our incredible audience, who tunes in faithfully either week over week or checks this out maybe for the first time? What does that mean to you, Pieter?
Yeah, there are two things that come to mind. One is the stats and the numbers and the things that we can look at, and the other one is more subjective, I guess. But the stats are great. So we are we've been doing this, first episode July 29, 2020. We've had an episode every week, except for last year, 2021. We had 2 episodes for most weeks. And our episodes have been listened to almost 90,000 times on the various platforms. And that's crazy, Cam. I mean, that's a lot. I know Jonathan had low expectations to start, and he said, and what he said was true, that this could be used, internally if necessary. I had higher expectations than Jonathan, but certainly not as high expectations as we actually reached. That's incredible, and it's incredibly motivating as well. Not only that people are listening to us, but that people are taking this content and that people are taking it to the streets, right? Taking it to their conversations, taking it and just, getting a more holistic understanding of what solid and effective and winsome pro-life apologetics actually are. So that means a lot. The thing that means even more to me though, Cam, is when we had people reach out to us, and we had people reach out. I mean, there were interns that we had, and there were people who volunteer with groups that we're very connected with, like Hamilton Against Abortion or Niagara Against Abortion, who would come up to us and often say, like, that episode on this particular topic was so helpful. I used it in conversation on the streets, and it was like, man, I had never thought of an analogy like that before. I didn't really think about it from that angle, and that helped me tremendously in my conversations. That kind of stuff means far more to me than the numbers, right? That people aren't just listening, on their drive to and from work and then never using it again, but people are actually taking this and using it in their conversations, and that this podcast is actually being used for cultural change, that people are changing their minds through this, and through the conversations that we're having. But not only the people who are doing regular on the streets activism, outreach using abortion victim photography, but we had people from like small communities, from churches who wanted to run a bake sale, but they were receiving pushback, who like a bake sale to support, pro-life issues. Moms who were like, my kid is learning this, what sort of thought do you have in response to that? That's incredibly, that's amazing for us as well, to know that not just the activists, but people in every area of vocation, parenting to, any other job that we can mention, are listening to this and are using it in the various spheres that they're in, with their children, with their peers, with a church that might disagree with some of the tactics, with a local group, who is sort of opposed to the message that they have, and they're like, how do we respond to this? And so the numbers are important for me. The numbers are huge. The numbers gives us a bit of an insight into where this podcast is going and what parts of the world and all of that. But to know that people are using this in conversation, I think is, far surpasses my, my excitement and thankfulness, gratitude for the numbers.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. We've had as one of our taglines, as you can see on your shirt there, change minds, save lives, transform culture, go forth and actually implement these conversation tools. And I can't say any more than what you had already added, right? Like it is so cool and so edifying to see people integrating these into conversations, and honestly, like not only just volunteers and folks that you had mentioned, but like even staff, to have staff come up and be like, hey, Cam, I listened to this episode, and that point that you and Pieter brought up is actually really cool. I never thought about that before. Other pro-life organizations in the States and in Canada and around the world saying like, hey, we're gonna integrate that into our conversational training and whatnot. It's really, really cool. And I'm really excited to keep this moving forward. And so quick update that over the summer here, I will continue pumping out episodes as often as I can. I'm aiming for once a week. You'll see guests, you'll have other people come on. But Pieter, tell us a little bit about, as we start to wind down, tell us a little bit about what you have on your horizon. It's been a real cool 2 years as part of the Pro-Life Guys podcast. You've been part of the CCBR team and family for 8 years or so now. Tell us what this next chapter entails for you a little bit.
Yeah. I've been part of CCBR since 2014, on staff in 2015, and then, here we are, 2022. I have nothing but good memories and good things to look back on, and a lot of gratitude for the folks I've worked with, both within the organization, during internships, during crash courses, training sessions in local volunteer groups and elsewhere as well. Just the things we've been able to do, the experiences we've been able to have. Before I get to your question, Cam, I was just thinking, I've been to an ultrasound of a baby that was saved. I've seen many people change their minds on abortion. I know a number of babies who were saved through interactions that I've had, or interactions that friends of mine have had while I was with them. And just experiences like that really caused me to have a ton of gratitude. Where I'm going from here, so my wife and I will be working, not to share like too many details, but we're going to be working with underprivileged and at-risk teenage boys. So the ministry we're working with, they will be housing us, and then we'll have about 5 to 8 boys living with us, and essentially we'll be parenting. So some of the boys have a number of challenges, childhood challenges and trauma and various things. And so we'll be working with them and, seeking to to do our best in their lives and to see them thrive in the ways that they can. So that's what we'll be doing. And that's why the bookshelves are empty behind me. We're moving from the house we're in now, and we're heading out to another location. So, yeah, that's after, like you said, Cam, about 8 years with CCBR. That's where my wife and I will be headed.
Gotcha. And that is the heart of a servant, folks, right there. A consistent pro-life ethic, right? Needing to uphold the dignity and value of every person, regardless of their experience and their life circumstance, all that kind of thing. I wish you nothing but the best, you and your wife and your kids and everybody who's part of this decision, Peter. It's been an absolute blast. It's been an honor working with you. And it's so cool to hear about this ministry that you're going into. I'm going to be honest. I'm hoping that at times we can get you back on the show to talk about whether it's your experience, whether it's the pro-life groups that are in the neck of the woods that you're heading to, all that kind of thing. This is not gone forever, but I'm wondering if you can, as we, like I mentioned, start to wrap this up. What kind of message do you want to leave with the audience? The audience, some of whom have been with us since day one, some of whom this might be the first episode for. What is the message that we need to take away and continue to empower and encourage pro-lifers, not only in Canada and America, around the world who are tuning in? Closing thoughts, final thoughts on send-off, I guess.
Yeah, first off, Cam, I think I want to say thank you. Thank you to our listeners. Those of you who are new to the show, those of you who are listening maybe once every few months, those of you who are regular listeners, thank you so much for taking in this content, for making Cam and I a part of your day, and a part of your pro-life ministry and learning more about various things in the pro-life movement and around it, and learning from some of the heroes. Thank you for, reaching out to us. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. Extremely grateful that, you were able to join us in this ministry as well, that you were able to financially partner. And, we're able to pay for a producer. We're able to get some of this equipment, some of the best equipment that we can. We're able to do more marketing and reach out to more people in more and more corners of the world. And so, I think first off, Cam, a huge thank you. And then I hope I'm preaching to the choir here, and in many ways, I think I am, knowing some of our audience. But continue going, right? I know a lot of people that I've interacted with, you as well, Cam, and I found myself in this sort of mindset as well, is that we want to see change, we want to see culture, shift in this direction, and people's worldview shift on the issue of abortion and so many other issues. And the only thing we do about it is complain about it with our friends and family over a coffee after church on a Sunday morning. And that's about as far as it goes. And I would say, and I think all of you would as well, is that's not passion. That's just complaint without any sort of substance whatsoever. And so I want to encourage you to, yes, talk about it with your family and friends. Yes, be a part of those solid communities where you can work out of and minister out of, but continue working to see the very thing that you think is right. The worldview that you espouse, that you believe would be best, is the pro-life worldview, and so many other things as well. Have the conversations. And yes, Cam, and yes, to whoever's listening, they're uncomfortable. A lot of times these conversations about these issues are very, very uncomfortable. I think about what a good friend of ours, John Barrow, said. It's amazing what God will do if we simply show up. If we simply have that conversation, if we simply go to the meeting and interact with people and show people what abortion is, if we simply step out of our comfort zones and do something along these lines, it's amazing what God will do. And I think you can say that, Cam, and I can say that as well, that God has done far more than I expected during my time at CCBR. And I'm not a phenomenal, sort of extraordinary type person, not by any stretch of anyone's imagination. And don't let Cam on the next episode tell you otherwise. But continue on in the fight, and do so from a place. I know most of our listeners are Christian. Some of them are, some of you folks aren't. But Cam and I have done this from a place, resting in Jesus, our Savior, resting in the hope that he gives to us, the identity that he gives to us, and then going forth. It doesn't matter what the world says. It doesn't matter what pro-abortion activists and advocates say about the work that we're doing. Our marching orders are not from them, and they're not from, our patriarchal church leader, or whoever else it might be. They're from God himself. So continue on, continue fighting. Cam, I wish I would have thought about this more earlier so I could have had a more succinct answer. But I hope this is satisfactory. And I mean, we're all working in various ways. We're all ministering in various ways. So being faithful in the small things, in our lives and continue working for the change that we wish to see.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, on behalf of the show, the audience, I hope that I speak on behalf of the audience. I wish you all the best, Pieter, in this next chapter of yours and your family's life. Traveling mercies and safe setup with the new ministry and the new home and everything like that. And for you, our audience, please know that I'll be back next week. We'll have guests. We'll have a few just solo episodes and whatnot over the summer here. I hope that you'll continue to tune in. Even with the absence of Pieter. And I hope that we can keep this show rolling so that we can continue giving the tools that you need to change minds, save lives, and transform culture. Final words, Pieter, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so I know you were doing the wrap up, and it was great, and that would have been a great place to stop, but I raised my hand. Sorry. You mentioned earlier it'd be cool, like we've talked about getting me on. Like there's no promises there, but we have talked about that, and our conversations are going to be ongoing to see what things work, like how things would work logistically, and just with the schedule I have and the location I'm in and all of that. So, I mean, if you're a praying person, maybe pray about that. But Cam, I wish you all the best as well as together in our various ministries that we're a part of. As together we seek to save lives, to change minds, and to transform our culture.